All right, this video is just to go over a bit of a review of HTML and CSS so far, and also to add in a few new tags, both in HTML and CSS, that will help make your website responsive. And by meaning responsive, that means it will change depending on if you're looking at it on a tablet or an iPad or a phone, or just change your browser size. So here's our Northeast Kingdom website, and I've added a few extra tags into mine so that when we resize the window, if I can grab it down here, if you notice that the text is and the content is resizing, and also then the image resizes. So I've used about an 80% of the device width for our body, and that means that it will put 10% margin on each side automatically. And I've told the image to scale down to 100%. So it will be automatically, it will be at 100% of itself for its max width, but then it will be 100% of the body when we scale it down. So we'll see how we add those things in and then review the other tags. So in your index, remember that in the HTML document, this is where we have all of our structure tags. So they have nothing to do with the style, but they're setting out our structure of the document. And remember, up in the title, that's where we add some, up in the head, that's where we add some of our extra tags that give extra information to the page. So like the title, and that is what appears up in the tab. It's also what you would bookmark, what would be bookmarked with the page. Then we have our links to our style sheet. And remember, within a link or within a tag, we can have different attributes. So for this particular tag, the attributes are href, the hypertext reference, and then the file name that it's linked to, which is our style sheet. And that has to be surrounded by speech marks. We have the rel reference, which basically tells us what type of sheet or what type of file that is linking to, which is a style sheet, and that it's a text CSS file. This is a new one. You should have come across it within Code Avengers, but I've added it into this one so that we can have some scaling. So this is a meta tag, and meta tags are tags that give more information to the browser on how to display your page. So this meta tag is talking about our viewport, and so viewport is how we actually look through. Think of it as the view into the web page. So we might be looking at it through a cell phone, through an iPad, through a laptop. So that's the name of it. And this meta viewport gives the browser instructions on how we control the page's dimensions and the scaling. And when we say in the content attribute that width equals device width, that sets the width of the page that you're looking at to follow the device width of the screen. So that means it can vary, and it will scale down nicely. And that initial scale of 1.0, that part sets the initial zoom level so that it's sort of at the initial 100% of the browser for that window when it comes on. So this tag is really important that it's in our head section if we want any sort of scalability. And quick review, remember we have our main body tag, and then we've got our headings. Heading 1 being the largest tag for our heading, largest size. Heading 2, and it can go all the way down to heading 6. And then our image, So I'm going to review the tag and then we'll see about how we change that with CSS to make it scale. So our image tag has that attribute of src, source, and then we give it the path to the image. And here when I hover over that, it says that it's 450 by 300 pixels. So that's the default size. And remember, the alt tag is what will be read if people are if people are blind and or visually impaired and need things read out to them. So that's important to always have. Now, by default, this is going to display at that 450 by 300 pixels, which is its size, but we can add some scaling through CSS. So let's go over to our CSS and see what has changed from the previous version to make this more responsive. So again, in our CSS rules, we look at, first we always name the tag. So the tag here that this CSS rule will be affecting is the body. So anything within the body will have to follow this rule. Then we open up curly brackets and make sure they're closed. When you're using brackets, the editor, it should open and close the brackets for you automatically. So as soon as you type one, it puts the close one for you. The next thing, and this should be color-coded in brackets in purple if it's correct, is that we put the attribute name of what we want to style within that tag. So for example, here it's background-color. And as soon as I start typing, it should pop up and you can just select it. Now, notice if I forget and just I didn't put in that colon, then the color coding looks wrong. So if you ever see wrong color coding, you know that that's the line that you have an error on. The other thing that it's common to do, besides forgetting the colon, is also to forget this end semicolon. And when you've forgotten the end semicolon, it stops reading the rest of the CSS after that. So none of this will take place. And if you notice, this is even if I had a correct color like blue, that's correct, but then everything else after it starts looking not correct. So I've got width, and width is in the wrong color. So just look at colors and that will help guide you as to where you might have made a mistake when you were typing your CSS rule. So it's always the name of the attribute, dot, dot, or colon, what we are actually, the value that we're giving it, and then we end it in a semicolon to say that's the end of this rule, and then we move on to the next rule. Now this is one that I've changed from our first example. It had been hard-coded at 800 pixels. And when it's hard-coded at 800 pixels, then it can't be responsive. So if I preview this now, even though I've set that device width, the body can't get any smaller than 800 pixels, so it's really not scaling. Now sometimes you want to ensure that your body or your different elements are an exact size, but many times, especially in with modern technology, we do want things to be responsive or to scale. So to fix that, we use percentages. And you can experiment with your percentages, but if I say I want my body to be about 80% of the window, then, and I'm just going to put in a comment here, that this will allow the body to scale down or up with the browser viewport. So this is just helpful that allows the scalability, and if you don't have that, then it's hard-coded. The next thing, remember that we said the margin, and this first part says the top of the bottom margin, that's 0 pixels. And the side we said to be auto, so the left and the right will be auto. And because we're scaling, we're saying the body is basically going to be 80%, and that means our left and right margin should be about 10% of each, which adds up to 100. 80 plus 10 plus 10 is 100. And then that will keep it centered, but it will allow the scaling. So now when I save that, you can see that it will scale, and I'm always have my main body within 80%, and then about 10% on either side. And this should work on a phone, and it should work on any type of device that we want. The next thing I want to review is the Google fonts. So remember, if we want to use a Google font, we have to go to the Google website, which I'll bring up over here, bring it over to the screen. You have to look at your fonts and decide what you want. Try to pair no more than 2 to 3 fonts. Usually you have a main font for your main headings. You might have a secondary font for your subheadings, and then 1 font for your body text. So 2 to 3, and you can experiment with what looks good. If I want to use a particular font, I just hit the plus to add it. So if I want Roboto for my sans serif font, and remember sans serif means without flicks, and then I might want a more serify font for my titles. And you need a little bit of contrast. If you don't have enough contrast between the titles and the main body, then it doesn't have a nice design because the headings don't stand out, but you also want them to pair and be harmonious. So you need the sort of mixture of the two. I might just for now, I'll try railway and add that. And then once I've selected my font families, to embed them into my web page, sorry, it's slipping away. I click on the @import. I only need to copy this line where it's just showing you that goes in a style sheet. So I copy that, Command C. In my style sheet, I paste that. So Command V to paste. And here I'm going to use Railway and Roboto. I could have left those other ones as well, but let's pretend we're starting from scratch. But if you wanted to add more, and then to use that, so if I decide I want Railway or Roboto for my main body font, then it shows me the rule down here. So I just highlight font family Roboto sans serif, and I can just replace this. Then the same thing for my headings. I'm going to try the Railway for my headings. So I Command C and Command V. And then I'll just save my style sheet, do another preview. And now I've got my new styles, or my new font styles. So that's how you can use your Google Fonts. And remember that I've given you some websites where you can look at some font pairings that people have already put together, but you can experiment on your own.